everything. I said that earlier, but I was on mute. So
No, it's been great. I'm just so glad that we did it. I think that a lot of collaboration is going to come out of this 7th annual Farm to Table Conference.
yeah.
I'm really inspired by all the speakers, and I know we're going to learn a lot from you. So,
Nice.
Sierra, you are Sierra Fairfield-Smith. You're the owner of Soul Food Gardens. You're a Western State graduate who has lived in the Gunnison Valley for over 10 years. You studied at Western Environmental Studies and Business, and then you went on to landscape manage and install the school gardens and train community garden managers. Soul Food Gardens was created in 2019 based on Sierra's passion to share the joy of growing food and to support food security in this amazing community. That I will turn it over to you, but I'll remind everyone you can ask your questions in the Q&A. So look at the bottom of your Zoom screen for the little Q&A box, and that will pop up, and you can type all your questions, and I will help moderate those questions so Sierra doesn't have to track too many things at once. So Sierra, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sue, for the introduction and all that you do to set it up. Yeah, so like Sue said, my name is Sierra Fairfield-Smith, and this is the Backyard Gardening 101 workshop for this webinar. So I kind of want to start off by getting a feel for where all of you guys are at. And so on a scale of 1 through 5 on your garden knowledge, put a number in the chat box based on that. So put a number in the number 1 in the chats if you have 0 garden experience and you're excited to learn more. Maybe you feel like you have like a bit of a black thumb. And then to a 1 or to a 5 in the comments if you are master gardener, been gardening super long time, feel like you know all sorts of stuff. Or you're in the middle ground, been gardening a little bit, but you're excited to learn more. Awesome. It's nice to hear from you guys. Looks like we have lots of people in the middle ground, so that's exciting. Some 2s, 3, 4, that's awesome. 3s, 4, 2, from Lexi. Hi, Lexi. It's nice to see everybody's name. Ashley, cool. Brianna, Rachel, cool. Yay, it's nice to just see your guys' names pop up on the screen too. Yeah, so I agree with Sue. Lexi, you know all sorts of stuff. So that's cool that you guys have some garden experience. I definitely planned this workshop to kind of go over some of the basics, but I think it's nice, even if you have some gardening experience, to just kind of like remember to like think of it more simply, and then you can go from there just to like check off the list and make sure you have everything under control. So a little bit about me. Sue already said, so I'll make this part quick. I graduated from Western, and then I did landscaping and school gardening. And during that time, I got to work with kids, teaching them farm to school lessons. I got to work with volunteers, working with them in the garden. And I also got to help train other school garden managers or community garden managers to help them get their gardens going. Lexi also helped with that. And Sue also has done a lot of working with the Mountain Roots crew. And I also landscaped. So I started school Soul Food Gardens out of collaborating all those things that I learned, and to continue supporting people in growing food and sharing that passion with other people. One thing I heard one time from this lady, Nicole Burke, from Gardenary, a company in Texas. She said food gardens are good times 3. So they're good for you, they're good for the community, and they're good for the environment. They're good for you because you get to eat delicious food, you get to watch it grow, you get the garden therapy from working in the garden. If you have kids, they get to see where their food comes from and get to play in the dirt. It's good for your community because it supports the food security in where you live. And you also end up sharing food with your neighbors some of the time. It's good for the environment because the food doesn't have to travel as far, using less carbon emissions. And I also believe that anybody can grow food, no matter if you don't think you have. Oh, nice, landscaping. Carla, that's awesome. Sorry, got distracted. Yeah, so anybody can do it, even if you think you're not good at growing things. It's definitely possible. So I want to start off with the very basics of growing things. So sometimes I think it's easy to get caught up in all the cool new trends of growing things, which is awesome when you get more into it, but I think it's helpful to start at the basics. So what are some things that plants absolutely need to grow? Put them in the chat box. So what are good dirt? Yeah, sunlight, nice. That's awesome. Healthy soil. Woohoo! Water. You guys are nailing it. That's all the things that I was, yep, water, perfect. Yep, love. That's true too. I like that one. Love definitely helps. So the things I was going for, you guys definitely mentioned. Soil, water, and sun are the things we're going to focus on to start. So soil, super, super important. I think for sure one of the most important things, well, these 3 things, but anytime I've gone to people's houses to help them with their gardens, yeah, nice, that's awesome. The thing that they're having the most hard time with is finding the right balance in their soil. So I come over to help them, and a lot of the times they're like, why are my plants growing? And it's because their soil is out of balance. So it can be anything from having too much organic matter, so too much compost in the garden, to not having enough nutrients, like not having enough nitrogen or other nutrients in the soil. So super important to have the right balance of nutrients and minerals in your soil. Eric McPhail did an awesome workshop on Thursday on healthy soil in the garden. So he is a super awesome resource for this. And I definitely recommend, if you didn't get to see his chat on Thursday, it was recorded. So that will be on the Producers Guild website, the recording of that. So definitely check that out to learn more about soil. Super, super important. And then the next thing, which is water, which you guys also brought up. Another thing that people can have trouble with, nice. There's also some really awesome comments giving suggestions too on soil. Yeah, so water. Water was the thing that I had the hardest time with when I set up my first garden, which was in college. And we had a horrible hose watering system from the irrigation ditch. And we were in college, so we were really busy. So we didn't do a very good job at watering regularly. So consistent water is definitely super crucial to having a successful garden. I definitely recommend setting up a timer system or a watering system. And that can be anything from setting up a timer, a basic timer that you can get at the hardware store, on the hose spigot with a hose, to a sprinkler. So that's like definitely on the simpler side. There's lots of different ways to set up a watering system. On maybe a little bit more fancy scale, you can get a good, like Carla said, yeah, you can get a good irrigation system set up in place with drip irrigation, maybe even a little sprayers sometimes. I set up my irrigation at my house last summer, and it was like amazing. The plants were so happy, and it saved me so much time, and it was a win for me and the plants and everybody involved. So definitely a good idea. It's also having that consistent water setup is nice for the plants because they know they're going to get the same amount of water every day. And so they just feel really supported, I think, and they can just keep growing. So another good idea, especially if you have a watering system in place, is to remember to keep checking it. So while you can manually start it or while it's going, make sure to check it maybe even once a week to see if nothing has broken. Make sure everything's getting all the water it needs, because the irrigation systems or your water system can definitely randomly go awry. And so it's good to know when things have changed, and to make sure all your plants are getting water. Another helpful hint for watering is to mulch around your plants on top of the soil to help retain the water in the soil. So you can use straw around your plants. Cover crops are super awesome because they also add to the nutrients in the soil. You can use wood chips around if it's like a perennial garden. Yeah, nice. We got some good info in the comments as well. Yeah, mulch is super helpful to retaining the water and helping your soil. Then you don't have to water as much. Another thing for water is to water in the morning or the evening and not in the middle of the day. So it kind of makes sense if you think about it. If you water in the middle of the day, the water, it's hot and the water will evaporate, and so you'll have to use more water. And it's also harder on the plants. So watering in the morning or the evening, and your plants will be happy, and so will your soil. Yeah, and drip irrigation is also more efficient for retaining water. So if you can set up a drip irrigation system, then that would be great. So moving on from water, we had soil, water, and now we're going to go over sun. So sun, also super important for plants growing. When you're setting up your backyard garden, you want to make sure that you place your garden in a spot that it can get the most sun. So if possible, south facing, always a good option. Not always possible, so west or east facing can also be an option. You want to make sure your plants are getting at least 6 hours of direct sunlight. So yeah, once again, if it's not south facing, make sure it's at least getting 6 hours. Also, when you're planning where you plant your plants, make sure that plants that need a lot of sun, like cabbage, are in a place where they're not getting blocked by other plants. On the other side of that, if you have plants that might benefit from a little bit of shade, like maybe your lettuce that doesn't want direct sun all day long, you can plant behind some sunflowers or something that will help it be a little bit more protected. Yeah. So let's go. I have a couple pictures or images for you guys with so yeah, 3 basics reminder: soil, water, sun. So if you're having things go awry in your garden, remember to think back to these 3 things and make sure these things are all going well. So the next thing we're going to think about, especially if you're wanting to plan your garden, is where do you want to put it? Where do you want your garden location to be? So these are some helpful things to think about. Like I just mentioned, south facing, or west or east. Next thing, to get the sun. Next thing is close to the house. So most people don't have huge properties, so no matter what, it will likely be close to the house. But if you're like, oh, but you have a big property and you're like, there's so much sun all the way over there, make sure it's somewhere where you'll actually be able to get to it and maintain it and harvest it. Check the water, then you'll have more likely chance of success. Also, kind of similar to that, make sure you have a water source nearby to get that important water to the garden. Water spigot. This is an example of a garden design that I have for somebody's house. Also, microclimate. It's pretty neat when you're doing a backyard garden that oftentimes there's places that you can put your garden so that it is in a microclimate, which means, for example, if it's in like a courtyard, then it's blocked by the wind. It gets heated by the walls all around it, so it becomes warmer and you have a microclimate surrounding your garden. And then warmer crops such as squash and tomatoes and peppers do better in your nice little happy microclimate. Also, if you're doing, or instead of a courtyard, you can also have it up against the wall, so then it captures heat from the wall or heat source that it's next to. Here's an example of that same garden that was in that last design. So the garden is close to the house. It's got a water spigot, easily accessible, lots of sun. Yeah, and a bit of a microclimate because it's protected from the wind. There's a fence over there on that west side, and it's close to the house. So yeah. Let's see here. Back to me. So another thing to think about if you're setting up a garden is, do you want to have raised garden beds or do you want to grow your garden straight in the soil? So some of the benefits of setting up a raised garden bed at your house is that you will have less weeding and less overall maintenance because it's off the ground. It's harder for weeds to get in there. You can start with fresh soil, which means there's less chance of having weeds in there already. Other benefits to having raised garden bed is that if you have burrowing rodents like voles and ground squirrels, you can set up your raised garden bed and put hardwire cloth, like metal wire, underneath the raised bed, so the burrowing rodents can't dig down and steal your plants, which if that's happened to any of you, it's super frustrating. So it's nice to prevent that if possible. Another good time to use a raised bed is if you have really hard packed soil. For example, at the CB school garden, the water table was really high, or is really high. So we did the best we could to try and drain the water and build up the soil. But the best option at that point really would be to build the soil up, and a raised bed would be very beneficial for that because it helps the drainage get better. So that's another good option. Some of the benefits for doing your garden in the ground is that it's easier to set up. You don't have to, not as expensive. You don't have to buy the material, the wood, the pavers, whatever you want to build your raised bed out of, and set that up. You can just clear the ground of weeds or grass, amend the soil, and start growing things in the ground. Growing in the ground can also be helpful if you are growing a large area, like a farm, because then you can bring in machinery like tractors. It's easier to, more efficient, easier to do the large scale system. The water retention can also be easier in the ground because it's in the ground. Raised bed is out of the ground. It's not quite as well protected and insulated. So there's some things to think about, raised bed versus in ground, especially if you guys are thinking about planting a garden or doing something else with your garden. Another thing to think about while setting up your backyard garden or working on one that you already have is pests. Something I ask people who are wanting a garden is what kind of animals or rodents do you have around your house? Maybe you already know that you have deer around, so that's definitely something to think about. If you're setting up a garden, you might want to, and you have a lot of deer around, you might have to build a fence or some sort of barricade for the deer. Fence is definitely a good option, but takes some time. If you have burrowing rodents, like I said, a raised garden bed with wire underneath can prevent that. Also, the burrowing rodents, which I know Sue Wyman and Lexi and probably a lot of you guys have dealt with, can be really frustrating once they're in there. But you can also do the fence with wire buried in the ground, 2 feet down. You can also set up traps, repellents. But yeah, those kind of things are more what you end up having to do once they're already in. But thinking about if you have pests around while you're thinking about setting up your garden, and how you can plan accordingly. So where are we at?
Sierra, we did have a question come in, and so I'll try to moderate those to make it easier for everyone. One question came in so far on the Q&A, and that, can you talk or speak about using gunny gold in your vegetable garden?
This is kind of a bit of a debated topic. I think it's kind of what feels most comfortable for the person, because the gunny gold people at the wastewater treatment plant say it's okay to grow vegetables with it. So technically it's okay. I think the college uses it. I personally don't use it for my vegetables. Like, I don't really want to use it for my lettuce and stuff like that, because I know there could be things still in the gunny gold that might not have gotten filtered out of there.
Sarah, I'll jump in on
Yeah.
that as well, because I received that question quite a bit. And
Yeah.
I think early when I first started growing in Gunnison, the water treatment plants. So to back up a little bit, what is gunny gold?
Yeah.
Know what it is. It is a it's basically compost that is built out of all of the tree waste that goes to the city of Gunnison's tree dump, and waste that goes to the tree dump, and our municipal sewage treatment plant sludge. And so as such, there's the potential that some toxins could remain in that. Now it is fully composted. It is treated with heat and air and water, and they analyze it and make sure that there aren't any significant toxins in it. That's my main concern with vegetables and so on, are potential heavy metals, maybe pharmaceuticals that aren't tested and aren't broken down. So I concur with you. I don't use my food crops. I think it could be helpful to use it for shrubs and ornamentals, and it is going to be a personal decision.
Yeah, thank you for your input, Sue. Yeah, all of your information is super helpful, so thank you. Yeah, I'm with Sue on that one. I don't use it for my food. I use it on my perennials, shrubs, trees, and ornamental stuff. Well, not, yeah. I might even use it on my raspberries too. So that kind of food I'm kind of in the middle ground with, depending on if I have other good compost around. But yeah, definitely compost or gunny gold on the ornamentals and shrubs and trees. And then other compost, hopefully from somewhere around here. That can be kind of hard to find sometimes. Yeah. I guess I'll go back to my chat, and then we can go back to some more questions at the end. What do you think, Sue? Sounds good. Awesome. Okay, so I'll go back to my screen share. So we went over pests, something to think about when you're planting your garden. Another thing to do that you can do while you're thinking about what you want to plant in your garden that helps repel pests and help your soil out, add nutrients to the soil and attract beneficial insects is companion planting. So this could go really in depth, but I'm just going to do a kind of a basic overview of this. So if you're more interested in this, you'll have to do some more research. But when you're planting a garden, think about planting herbs around it, especially like the nice home backyard garden, flowers, things like comfrey, which is right here, that adds to the soil, one of my favorite things, and you can use for a mulch. Yarrow, which is also super beneficial for lots of reasons, attracts beneficial insects. You can use it for medicine. It's beautiful, has nice flowers. Other flowers like sunflowers actually is a trap crop. So aphids, instead of going to your nice kale, might go to your sunflowers instead. Yeah, so look into companion planting when you're planting your garden. And it's also a nice way to make your backyard garden more of a ecosystem, which is nice because you get bees in there. You get the beneficial insects, like I said, ladybugs, and your garden becomes more of an ecosystem, which is pretty neat to see. Yeah, and here's a little thing about good bugs and bad bugs. There's lots more of them, but here are just a couple of the bad bugs that we find in Gunnison and Crested Butte. So aphids, I'm sure lots of you guys have heard about. Cabbage looper, which sometimes can be hard to see because they're exact same color as the plant, and flea beetles. So each one of these things you can treat in different ways if they have, if they come in, but I'm going over them right now because of what I was talking about with companion planting. So when you plant all those different types of plants in your garden, then you'll have a less likelihood of getting the harmful insects, and you'll attract more of these good bugs that eat the bad bugs and help your garden out.
Sierra, if I could jump in as well, I want to make sure that people don't confuse those flea beetles with ground beetles. And so make sure you get in a view of the shape and the size. Flea beetles, a little teeny tiny. You get to my age, you almost have to put on reading glasses to see the flea beetles. Ground beetles are going to be like half an inch long, and they are definitely your friend. So my advice to everyone is, if you see a bug in the garden, they are innocent until proven guilty, unless you can definitely identify that that's a bad bug for your garden. Assume that it's nature working with you, because the ground beetles are dynamite, and I love it when I see them. But they're going to look up, 5 times as big as these little flea beetles.
Oh yeah, thanks, Sue. That's a good point. Yeah, and sometimes you might just get one. They might just be 1, 2, and they're actually not. Yeah, I think that's a good point. They're proven innocent till proven guilty. So once you start seeing your plants looking bad and you see those bad bugs on there, then you'll really know. But yeah, flea beetles definitely look kind of like fleas. That is for sure. All right, one more thing I'll go over, and then we'll get more into questions. More specific to our climate here in Gunnison and Crested Butte is our growing zone. So here's a map of Colorado. Gunnison is right here. We are zone 4A, which is the purple, and Crested Butte is 3B. So here's a closer up map. So if you're looking at plants to buy, wondering what you can grow in the Gunnison Valley, this is a good place to start. It's easy to look up the plants growing zone. A lot of the times at the nurseries, if you get your plant at a nursery, they have a tag that says the growing zone, or you can ask if you guys go to the Producers Guild plant stand, all of those plants will be able to grow here too. So that's a helpful way to know that. It means by buying your plants locally and from the nice local farmers that we have here. So yeah, helpful to know. Here's a little chart on the temperatures that we have, average temperatures. But usually I say in your backyard garden, starting to plant in May, direct seeds, and transplants, depending on if you have season extenders. Same with seeds, it can vary a little bit, but end of May, beginning of June. Do you have any comments on that, Sue? When to plant?
Sure, I'd say that, of course, the season extension that you have will make all the difference. Row covers for your early spring plantings. And of course, Your snow peas, you'll probably be depending on the climate at your backyard garden, you'll probably be planting your snow peas in mid-April. So that's the one thing that can go in the ground early without additional protection.
Yeah, yeah, awesome, thank you. And then we have, so May, we'll say May start, except for your peas in April. June, July, August, September, things are getting cold again, might be dying. Last year we had huge snowstorm, September 8th, which was very early and kind of crazy. And then we're usually closing up the gardens in beginning of October, middle of October maybe. Once again, depends on your setup that you have. And Matt Ozip is doing a season extension class next, right? And so I think that's
yes,
on the
and
other.
If I could, Sierra, if I could just jump in on that. Matt is in track 2. He's in track 2, and we're all currently in track 1. So in this track, as soon as you're finished, Sierra, we'll have Laura Parker talk about seed saving. And if I know it's all of huge interest to all of us, but if you're more interested in season extension with Matt Ozip with Iola Valley Farms, you'll jump over to track 2 for that presentation. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Sue. Yeah, there's so much helpful information too. So there also will be recorded. So if you want to watch both, there'll be the recordings, which is awesome, which I'm happy about too. Yeah, so that's kind of a snippet. It's hard to cover everything in 45 minutes. So those are kind of the things that I focus on when I try and help people in their backyard gardens, is to cover all of that and make sure they have all of that set up. So that's just an overview of how to hopefully set up and have a successful garden. Yeah, if you guys ever want to reach out and contact me, my business is Soul Food Gardens, and you can just look that up. Dang, July 8th. That's crazy. You never really know what could happen around here.
Well, that's because my farm is in one of the spots in Gunnison. As you're teaching everyone about where to put their garden, don't put it where my farm is. So it's okay.
Yeah, totally. You never know. It's a crazy place we live in. Definitely, yes, nice to have season extension.
Yeah.
And
yeah, definitely. Yeah, you'll learn to love your frost cloth. You'll learn high tunnels. Yeah. You know, we've got 7 more minutes, so it's plenty of time for folks if you want to chime in with questions for Sierra or questions for anyone else. We can open up the discussion if needed. So, well, the plant sale is coming up. As Sierra mentioned, the Gunnison Valley Producers Guild will have 2 plant sales this spring. This is our 4th annual. And let's see who's going to be there. Oh, and then yes, we are going to have the plant sale, one in April and one in May. A question just came in about sources of topsoil. Sierra, do you want to take the first crack at that?
Sure. The Tamichi Materials, just east of Gunnison, they harvest from the Tamichi area, and they have lots and lots of topsoil locally from local source. So topsoil is really heavy. So you can go there and pick it up if you have a truck. They also deliver it. I've never actually gotten it delivered from them, but they, I think, usually deliver it in large amounts. So if you want a small amount, you can go pick it up there. Do you have any?
Yeah. I would say I would agree that they're a good source if you do truly need native material to build your raised beds. I would say there's a lot to be said for building your own topsoil.
Yeah.
It's a while, but if you start harvesting organic material and trying to develop your own leaf litter, you can go a long way toward building a garden without having to bring in a lot of topsoil.
Yeah.
One more question came in, and I think it relates back in part to Adrian Fielder's presentation. Will anyone be selling comfrey at the plant sale? Two. One, we at Gunnison Gardens do have some comfrey at our farm, but we haven't potted it up for sale. I'll look at whether we can get at it by May. We might be able to bring some, but there's the Top of the World Garden Club, which are typically don't anyone take this the wrong way. It's the old ladies who sell perennials and they often have comfrey. And Kathleen Kortner would be a good resource, and I might reach out to Kathleen and see if she's willing to bring comfrey to our plant sale as well, because it is a super chop and drop. Chickens love to eat it. It's a medicinal. There's all sorts of reasons to bring comfrey. It's too late for all of us to really push it out there this year. We might be able to get it potted up to bring to the farmers market later in the summer or this time next year so that we can all start growing it and sharing it. So hopefully that answered the question about comfrey.
I think so. Thank you. Looks like we also have a question about how to remove flea beetles. The only time I had them at a really bad infestation was in Boulder, and we just covered them with frost cloth and tried to protect them. Have you found a good method for flea beetles or had to deal with them very much?
Well, I'm going to say either I've never, knock on wood, I've never had flea beetles, or my eyes are such that I can't see the flea beetles. That's a joke because I pay close attention to my plants. I would see if they were all gnawed up. So I've never had them. I never had to deal with them. Maybe they're not as prevalent here in Gunnison, but if I have to turn to something, I will always turn to organic methods first. Is compost tea surprisingly can help aphids. It might be able to help with flea beetles as well. I think what that does is supercharges your plants with their own microbiome. Second thing is we'll go to something that's OMRI approved, that is organic approved. So you might go to a neem oil or a takedown spray, something like that. Takedown spray is spinosad, which comes from a bacteria. And so it is all organically approved, and they say you can use it up to the day of harvest. But I may need to look into that a little bit more.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. That's helpful. Yeah, the one time we had a lot, well, speaking of planting trap crops, I've planted radishes, like kind of sacrificial radishes, because flea beetles really like the radishes. So they would just eat those instead, which was an option for sure. So there's definitely something to be said for those.
Okay. I see the question came in also about spider mites on vegetable plants. You want to do that first, Sierra?
I actually haven't really had to deal with spider mites hardly at all yet. Have you?
Well, that's good. So, from my experience, never outdoors. They've shown up in the greenhouse.
Yeah, I think that's why I haven't.
For me, it's been a challenge to just learn it's different from growing outdoors. Not there to work with you year round as much. So what we've found is neem has helped, and again, the OMRI approved takedown spray. We've used those. There's also what Lynn Gillespie from Paonia with she does the high performance gardening course online. We almost ordered them last year, and then the spider mites didn't come back. But there is an organic predator that will eat spider mites, but it can be kind of tricky because it wants a high humidity environment to thrive. So if you do need to order in some mites, if you're curious, I can send a link, or we can post a link. I've got it on my laptop. But if you do have to order in these natural predators, they need a specific environment to live in and work as well. So those are the few things I know that will be effective.
Awesome.
Try not to let your plants get stressed.
Yeah.
They're always more susceptible to pests.
Yeah. Awesome advice. Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's why I haven't dealt with them, is because I mainly just haven't had the fortune to work in the greenhouse yet.
Well, it's a mixed bag. So, yeah. So hey, it's 12:59 on that note. I'm gonna look, are there any burning questions left? Otherwise, we will let Sierra off the hook. And I'll prepare to do an introduction to our next speaker, Laura Parker with